Joe, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I know people will continue to hop on. So first of all, welcome to all of our friends at Grow Cedar Valley. And on behalf of us, we're glad to have you here. This is our annual competitive dashboard presentation by Joe Murphy from the Iowa Business Council. Joe's the executive director, but he's also a UNI grad. So I want to welcome him back to the hood here. So thanks for sharing everything you know. So for the last decade, folks, the dashboards served as an economic review of Iowa's standing compared to the rest of the country. So Joe has been executive director for a few years now, and you may remember, for those of you who were part of this presentation last year, it was about the last time we all got together face to face, because it was mid-March of 2020, and then we all know what happened, and we were meeting virtually for several months, well, almost a year. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started. And Joe, I think Betty's allowing you to share the screen, so you're welcome to take it over here and share with us everything you know.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cary, and appreciate everybody's time this morning. It's great to be virtually back in the Cedar Valley area. A lot of great memories, not only as a student, but also as an employee of UNI many years ago. Really started out my professional career at UNI. So it's great to be back. I hope to be back in person next year if I'm lucky enough to be invited back. I think I've put maybe 1,500 miles on my car since 54 weeks ago, since the last time I was with you all. So thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here today. Really appreciate the time and really appreciate everything that you all are doing as an area chamber. Want to briefly just talk about the Iowa Business Council this morning, and then really focus much of our time on Iowa's competitive dashboard that really compares Iowa to the rest of the country, but then also kind of share some of our thoughts and insights on the COVID-19 economic outlook for the remainder of 2021 and maybe even beyond. So with that, I think you all know, but just to kind of level set with everybody, the Iowa Business Council was established in 1985 in the midst of the farm crisis. That founding mission of serving as a catalyst for economic growth in Iowa is really something that we're very deliberate about, especially over the last 54 weeks, really trying to figure out how we can lift up all Iowans, lift up all wealth building opportunities for companies and individuals. And our council is made up of the top executives, the 22 top executives of some of Iowa's largest employers. You can almost think of us as a mini think tank. Our primary functions are global thought leadership, so things like this, research, which we'll get into, and then we have a robust advocacy platform as well, both at the state level at the Iowa State Capitol, but also federally as well. From an aggregate perspective, last year, our members, and many of them are in your area as well, our IBC members employed more than 172,000 Iowans, almost 173,000 actually, had almost $10 billion in combined payroll, had over $2 billion in research and development, and $1.6 billion in capital investment. And I share these statistics really just to kind of demonstrate the fact that business is a really important lifeblood for the state, an economic driver. And I think sometimes in the heat of political rhetoric and other things like that, sometimes that gets lost. And obviously, I want to be a supporter of business and all businesses, but I think sometimes it gets lost on all of us at times on just how different, for the worse, the state would look without our great companies in Iowa, not just IBC member companies, but really the whole economic ecosystem, right down to the small shops or the burgeoning entrepreneurial class. So I always like to start off with a little bit of a presentation on the overall impact of big business in Iowa. So let's just jump into the Iowa competitive dashboard for this year. You can see our 5 indicators here. And I should mention as well that we partner with the University of Northern Iowa's Business and Community Services Division to help us with this project. And they have been just a fantastic partner for us over the last 10 or so years, and really help us understand the data, compile the data, and then interpret the data as well. So we would definitely be lost without our partners at UNI. You can see here what we like to call sort of these gas gauges on where Iowa compares on these 5 metrics compared to the rest of the other 50 states. you can see that we do pretty well. We're all competitive to varying degrees in there, right in the yellow, some farther to the right, some farther to the left, and we can get into the reasons why in a little bit. But I think it's also important to understand that this is a snapshot in time. This is not necessarily designed to be a marketing document. In fact, one of the things that the Iowa Business Council, I think, achieves a lot of credibility and influence is because we just share the data for what it is. We don't try to pander the data towards one division set or another. We really just report what it is. And the important thing on this information as well is every data set that we use consistently throughout all 50 states. So we can measure the same statistics in Iowa as we can in California, et cetera. And so I think that that's really important. And I think it's also important to note that because we are comparing ourselves to all of our other fellow states in this country, you have to understand that some of our data sets, and this is a good example moving into economic growth, some of our data sets, while it looks like it's not great or right bordering on the yellow to red, is actually a pretty good number for the state of Iowa, considering a 3 million person population. You know, the gross state product is a good example of that. The fact that we have 194, almost 105, $195 billion in gross state product is really good for a state like Iowa. When we compare ourselves to California or Florida or New York or one of the other larger states, you know, it's a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison, but still the point remains we're able to measure consistently, but I think it's just important to put that into context. When you look at our overall economic growth numbers, you'll see that Iowa continues to rank very well in the nation for labor force participation, but no surprise to you or your members, Cary, paired with our low unemployment rate, Iowa continues to face a persistent shortage of available workers for businesses to grow and expand in Iowa. And that's something that we're very concerned about moving forward. I know something that you're all working on as well, something that we really need to take a hard look at. Other factors that we think right now is our median household income. While we did lose a little bit in state rank, 25 to 30th, we actually increased in total dollars. So you can see how sometimes it's important. You can see how sometimes you have to really look at the data for what it is. We're increasing, going in the right direction. Other states have just increased a bit more than we have from a ranking perspective. So from an economic growth standpoint, one of the things we always try to do is provide recommended actions or solutions to all of these categories. Our biggest recommended actions this year will be to substantially increase investment in Iowa's broadband infrastructure to bolster connectivity. We were very excited to see just yesterday afternoon, actually, the Iowa House of Representatives pass House File 848, 93 to nothing, that set up the tiered system, basically the mechanics to implement a more robust broadband infrastructure plan in the state. That's very exciting. Now goes on to the Senate, and we'll see what they do. We have good feelings on that, though. And then we're also very supportive of increased housing opportunities. You know, if we need to grow our state's population, but that means we need to have a better housing stock and available housing opportunities for individuals, not just workforce housing, but also affordable housing. One of the things that we're very encouraged to see is the Iowa Housing the Iowa Housing Tax Credit Program that was proposed this year by Director Durham and the governor, that really gets toward providing capital and opportunities for the lowest income Iowans for them to begin to generate some wealth through home ownership. Very important as we think about the long-term success of our state. Moving into education and workforce, you know, Iowa remains in the top 50% of states when it comes to 4th grade reading and 8th grade math. However, our reading and math levels have dropped a little bit, and that is something that we're concerned about. Obviously, there's reasons for that, and I think there's something to be said for other states finally catching up to where Iowa has been. You know, Iowa has been so good so long in this area, but this is something in particular that we really want to keep an eye on moving forward. You know, we were all of our school children, mine included, were sort of locked down last year and sort of lost some momentum in that early elementary and middle school area. And so this will be a very important statistic moving forward to determine how people are achieving their academic goals in the future. I think that that's something that we really need to continue to take a look at. Two new statistics that I wanted to share on this item with you all today are Future Ready Iowa, which is no surprise or no stranger to this group, but also our secondary learning or our secondary school work-based learning. Future Ready Iowa, you all know what that is. We're trying to get to 70% of Iowans with some sort of advanced opportunity or learning opportunity beyond high school by 2025. We're well on our way to achieve that. But our goal or our focus on work-based learning is also that something new. And in Iowa last year, 121 high schools offered work-based learning opportunities for their high school students out of 300 or 450 or so. So, just a little bit more than a quarter. So that's something that we want to see increased. That's something that we think is very important from a workforce talent standpoint. It's also something we view as an equity tool as well, providing those opportunities for students to give them exposure to careers that they never really thought either existed or were possible for them is really important. And so we're partnering with great organizations like John Deere and others to really try to roll this out in a robust way. And our partners in the governor's office and the governor's economic recovery advisory board is completely on board with this as well. And their goal is to offer work-based learning opportunities to 100% of Iowa high school students by 2025. So something that we have a lot of work to do, but a noble goal. Another workforce recommendation that's not necessarily reflected in the overall chart that I just shared is childcare initiatives. I think you all know that childcare is something that's continued to be something that Iowa needs to get a better handle on. Iowa leads the country with both parents working outside of the home at 75%. Iowans' childcare expenses is actually the most expensive item in their budget, more than their mortgage or their rent. And as we've seen in the pandemic, childcare opportunities have not only gone away, but also exacerbated the need for childcare opportunities. With more people working from home, it's really hard to balance not only caring for your young children, but also doing your job and maybe being an educator as well at the same time. So very difficult situation right now. Childcare is definitely a workforce item for us and something that we're very proud to partner with the Iowa Women's Foundation and other organizations to move forward some concrete policy on this. One bill in particular in the Iowa legislature that we're following is the Cliff Effect Bill, House File 302. We're hopeful and optimistic that will make it out of committee this week for it to remain eligible. The House passed it 94-0. The Senate has passed it out of a subcommittee, but now we need them to take action on a committee-wide basis. So we're hoping for good things there this week on that. Governance, I think you all know this story a lot better than I do, or are at least very familiar with it. This is really looks at our ability to run our state, but also our individual and corporate tax indexes as well. And you'll notice, of course, for many years in a row now, we rank at or near the bottom in our tax structures, both at the corporate level and on the individual level. That's something that we continue to try to push forward as an initiative at the legislature. We were very supportive of the Invest in Iowa Act last year. We're interested to see that come back in some capacity next year. But we also realize that there's some discussion this year to remove the triggers on the tax reform bill of 2018 that would speed up income tax cuts on the individual side and make it more simplistic, more transparent, and more stable. You'll also notice something that was a little bit surprising this year is that we actually dropped 14 spots in the Best Run States in America Index, according to 24/7 Wall Street. And this was due in part to a smaller GDP growth rate and a smaller job creation and growth rate over a 5-year period. And I think on the employment growth really is an indicator of the overall challenges we continue to face with population. It's tough to create jobs in a state where we've got more job openings than people willing to take them. So those jobs are then being created elsewhere outside of Iowa. So something, again, that we have to get a better handle on moving forward. We need to be also a very welcoming state in Iowa. We need to reject bills or other things, other policy initiatives that would discriminate. We need to lay out the welcome mat on all borders around Iowa for people to come in, to our state and take advantage of the great lifestyle that we all know Iowa living can be. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we've taken a much larger role in repelling some of those bills this year, and something that we look forward to from a workforce perspective down the road as well. Health and wellness, you can see we're pretty much right there in the middle with respect to our dashboard. A few things of note here. We still continue to do very well with the percent lacking health insurance, very, very small in Iowa compared to other states. Our obesity rates have actually dropped as well, so we're going in the right direction. One of the things that we think that we can take advantage of the pandemic with when we think about the active primary care physicians is looking at telehealth opportunities. We know that we continue to struggle to recruit in physicians, particularly to rural parts of the state. But let's take advantage of our broadband legislation that we're pursuing right now. Let's take advantage of the fact that we're all most of the time comfortable with telehealth opportunities, or at least Zooming like this, and try to expand those opportunities throughout the broader state. You know, we've done that in our family here in the Des Moines metro area. Other individuals have really taken advantage of that as well. And I think that that's something that you'll continue to see moving forward. We have 3 great health systems as part of the Iowa Business Council, and they will tell you that they had always planned to more robustly expand into telehealth services, but the pandemic obviously forced their hand. And so they're miles ahead on this than they ever expected to be at this point in 2021, a year ago. So that's a good thing. That's a silver lining of the pandemic. Now we just need to continue to build out our infrastructure, our broadband capabilities, and really make sure that we're providing those good medical services and healthcare delivery options to all Iowans. Very, very important. Demographics and diversity. This is an area that we're spending a lot of time in of late, particularly over the last year. You'll see that our population growth rates are not very good year over year. You know, this is something that Iowans have, or that the state has struggled with for some time. A stagnant population at best, or most charitable. You'll see, based on this projection, when we take our snapshot in time in the fall and compare it to the previous snapshot, the previous fall, we actually lost an estimated 1,000 people in Iowa. Now we'll wait and see where those final numbers come out once the full and final US Census is published, hopefully sometime soon. That's a whole other PowerPoint presentation. But it's important for us to understand the situation that Iowa is in. If you look at our 5-year population change statistics, not much better of a picture. We're continuing to decrease in that 5-year growth rate of only 1.1%, down 0.9% from the year before. Definitely not going in the right direction. So very concerning for us from an overall migration standpoint and overall workforce standpoint as well. The other thing that we're very concerned about is the net overall migration, actually a negative number year over year. So that means more people are leaving Iowa than coming into the state. Obviously, that's something that's very concerning for us as we try to attract more people into Iowa to get them to take advantage of the things we all hold near and dear. And of course, ethnic diversity of population, we need to do much better at. I don't think anyone denies that. A lot of our companies are leading in this area. Every one of our companies, for that matter, is leading in this area. We really believe in a commitment to advancing diversity and equity and inclusion is really a fundamental element of corporate success and responsibility. And this focus on DEI will really guide our decision making as policy initiatives are being proposed, not just in context to the state's overall population growth, but in context to the overall state diversity as well. Very important for us to continue to make progress in this area, have those difficult and courageous conversations, and really get involved and be a leader on this when we see things that need to be changed. So I want to take just a couple minutes, if it's okay, to talk about the overall economic outlook for 2021. So our 4th quarter survey that came out in early January showed our overall economic outlook score of 62.5. This is significant because that was the 2nd straight quarter of positive economic outlook for us. Anything above 50 represents positive economic outlook, and it actually increased over the 3rd quarter. Now, we will be releasing some new information next week as we poll and survey our members to see where they think the next 6 months will take them. But we expect this to be pretty well consistent. You can imagine, and I'll show you a slide in a second, the level of pessimism that surrounded the economy at around this time last year and over the first 6 months of last year. But of course, the same concerns over uncertainty, attracting and retaining a talented workforce, continued uncertainty around COVID-19. So obviously good news that vaccines continue to get injected into people. I think about 6 months ago, or I'm sorry, six or 7 weeks ago, we were only getting about 11,000 doses per week in Iowa. That number is more than 100,000 doses right now. So we're going in the right direction. Iowa's in the top 10, I believe, in doses administered, at least in the first dose. So very good news for us as we work towards a vaccinated population or herd immunity population. So if you haven't yet, hustle and get your vaccine to the extent that you can. Very important that we all do that. And here you can see the overall economic trend lines, two big troughs, obviously the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, and then the very steep drop off and the very steep increase just over the last 12 months. That's not to say that we're back to where we were 54 weeks ago before the pandemic really hit Iowa, but this is to say that our economic outlook or our level of optimism for the future is very high. We know that there is still a long way to go, and we recognize that. We don't want to be tone deaf to that, but we do believe that what we're doing right now in Iowa will really set the stage or set the foundation for future growth and prosperity that not only gets us back to where we were, March 1st of 2020, but eclipse that point as well. You can see our unemployment continues to be very, very strong statewide. Most recent data, 3.5% compared to the national 6.2% unemployment rate. And our revenues are continued to increase as well. The Revenue Estimating Conference met about 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago, and they projected year-over-year increases, not only for this current year, but a 3.8% revenue increase for this next fiscal year starting July 1 of 2021, and then a 4.5% increase in revenue for fiscal year 23. So very good economic trends continuing to come from the state. I just saw a report yesterday that Iowa's GDP expanded, by a lot as well. So we're headed in the right direction from an outlook perspective. We feel really good about where things are going. Again, not to say that we're out of the woods on this, but we're going in the right direction. So moving forward, we're going to continue to work with groups like yours. We're going to continue to work with policymakers to elevate these big ideas, these big examples of what Iowa can do to lead the country. Things on broadband, things on housing, childcare, DEI efforts. We really want to convey a sense of openness to all of these ideas. And we need to make sure that what we're doing right now lays the foundation for a more successful Iowa in the future. We think that that's so critically important. And as we talked about our population challenges, it's going to take some effort. And so that's why we're challenging all organizations that we talk to do everything that they can to recruit people into your communities. Businesses can't expand in Iowa if they don't have access to a qualified and a highly talented workforce. And our current population, unfortunately, is going in the wrong direction, not only with respect to the overall levels of population, but just the ability to get new people involved. So those are some of the things we'll continue to focus on. This is my contact information, and would be thrilled to continue this conversation with everybody. Cary, thanks so much for your time, and thank you all so much for your continued partnership. We partner a lot with not only your organization, but a lot of other chambers around the state, and I think the relationships between our organizations are really good, and those are the types of partnerships that keep Iowa moving forward. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. I did invite folks, if they had questions, to put them in the chat box. And we do have one here from Mike Malero. I don't know if you had a chance to read it on the tax ratings, and wondering if IBC does an analysis of the state spending relative to other states? And if you do, is there any assessment on where the spending is disproportionately compared to other states?
We've not looked at state spending necessarily. I mean, Iowa obviously has a constitutional amendment where they can't spend more than 99% of the revenue coming in. And in fact, the current majorities in both the House and the Senate have expanded on that over the last 10 years or so since Republicans, I'm not making a political statement, just stating what they have stated. They've taken that a step farther and said that they will not spend more money on what money is coming in. So that number actually goes from 99% to somewhere 92, 93% of available revenue that they're actually spending. Those tax climate statistics are from the nonpartisan tax foundation that looks at all of this. And so it not only looks at the overall rates, but it also looks at property taxes. It also looks at the complexity of the system. So how does Iowa compare with, how many brackets they have, how many tax credits they have? Cary, as you try to recruit companies in from out of state, it's a very long conversation about, how, don't look at the top line number from a corporate standpoint, look at this number because you can get all these different tax credits. So it's not very easy to understand. And I think that's our biggest complaint as well. We need to simplify this. We need to take a real look at that.
I think that's also a question that we could project over to IEDA. We know that the governor's priority, at least next session, will be placemaking in a lot of the community development projects and opportunities, especially getting through what we needed to do with childcare, broadband, and housing this session. So this would be a great question to pose to IEDA about what that analysis might look like with our surrounding states or comparative states. So
yeah, great idea.
Also, another question, you may or may not know this, what would the economic impact of legalizing marijuana be? Anybody know that?
I don't know that. I know that that's something that not only Iowa, but a lot of other states continue to talk about. I don't see that necessarily happening anytime soon, obviously not in this legislative session, but the fact that that gets talked about with more and more bipartisan support probably shows the trend line on where that's likely to head at some point in the future.
Right, very much so. Any other questions from our listeners, from our attendees here today? I know we mentioned that this was being recorded. We'll make this available to anyone who, and we'll also post it on our social media platforms. Could we also get access to your PowerPoint presentation, Joe?
You bet, I'll send it over.
Perfect. I think that's details and data that a lot of what you shared, some of it isn't surprise. Some of it is, the trends are eye-opening, but I think the most important thing is that we have data to support that. And so as we make plans, we now have a good bank board there to move forward with. So appreciate all of your work with UNI and Institute for Decision Making and BCS so that we could get accurate and clear data for people to make decisions from. So it's very, very important. Any other questions from the folks? I don't see anything, Joe, but your contact information will be on the PowerPoint, as you mentioned, and we'll make sure that that's accessible to people. So again, thank you. We'll do this every year, if not more. So next year, our vow is that we see each other face to face if we can, although we know that we're reaching a lot of people having these virtual meetings and conversations. So we'll probably continue with a hybrid. So thank you for your time this morning, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time. Go Panthers.
Awesome. Yeah, good for you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your week. Take care.